October 1812. The war thus far. On October 7th, an army commanded by Brigadier General James Winchester arrives at Fort Defiance, which was situated at the convergence of the Auglaize and Maumee rivers, the location of present-day Defiance, Ohio. Winchester was supposed to command the Army of the Northwest, but was pushed aside when William Henry Harrison was made a major general of the Kentucky militia. At the time of reaching the fort, Winchester was in command of one wing of Harrison's forces. If Pierre Burton is correct in his observations, and I have no reason to doubt him, Winchester is extremely unpopular with the troops, especially with the militia, which will eventually have disastrous results. According to Burton, Winchester considers resigning upon learning of his replacement by Harrison, but decides to serve on. I think his first idea was the best one. On October the 9th, U.S. Naval Lieutenant Jesse Elliott and Army Captain Nathan Towson, Towson, both natives of Maryland, captured the British brigs HMS Caledonia and HMS Detroit, which had formerly been the USS Adams and was captured at Detroit. Captured the British brigs HMS Caledonia and HMS Detroit as they lay at anchor near Fort Erie along the Niagara River. The Caledonia, with a load of furs, pork destined for Fort Malden in Emmitsburg, and some American POWs, escapes to the American side and will be renamed the USS Caledonia. But the Detroit is swept down the Niagara River and becomes a target for British artillery firing from the shore. Elliott fights back until out of ammunition, and the ship will run aground on Squaw Island, now known as Unity Island. Elliott flees back to the American side, while the Detroit is destroyed by artillery, both British and American. Note. This is in capital letters, so it's an important note. Note. In The Invasion of Canada, Pierre Burton paints a very different picture of this engagement, so you might want to check it out. I'm so intrigued. I plan to make a more detailed video about this skirmish at some future point. Richard Felto's book, The Call to Arms, The 1812 Invasion of Upper Canada, also provides a detailed account of the raid. On October 13th, the Battle of Queenston Heights takes place. It is one of the major battles of the War of 1812 and will be covered in a separate video when I review Robert Malcomson's book, A Very Brilliant Affair. I only have to finish reading it first. On October 18th, USS Wasp, an American sloop of war, intercepts a convoy of 6 merchant vessels bound for Britain and escorted by HMS Frolic. As the main armament of both vessels were short-range carronades, short smoothbore cannons used as short-range anti-ship and anti-personnel weapons, the ships closed to within 60 yards and opened fire at 11:30 a.m. The Wasp fired low at the Frolic's side, while the Frolic fired high to destroy the Americans' rigging. After 22 minutes of slugging it out, the Frolic had massive casualties. When the Americans eventually boarded, they found 90 men, including every officer, had been killed or wounded. The Wasp had hoped to claim Frolic, at least what was left of it, as a prize, only to be captured in turn. In the end, Frolic was broken up in November 1813, while the Wasp was taken into British service and eventually renamed HMS Peacock. On October 25th, the USS United States, one of the U.S. Navy's 6 original frigates, confronts HMS Macedonian, bound for the West Indies, 500 miles south of the Azores. The United States boasted 55 guns, the primary weapon being 32 24-pounders. By way of contrast, the Macedonian had only 49 guns, which included 28 18-pounders. This was her first naval action. According to Wikipedia, the United States could fire 864 pounds of shot against the Macedonians' 528 pounds. I don't like them odds. The American ship, commanded by Stephen Decatur, began the action at long range, taking advantage of the longer range of his 24-pounders over at the British ship's 18-pounders. His first volley was inaccurate, with the British response bringing down a small spar on the American vessel. The Americans' next broadside left the British vessel largely dead in the water. By noon, the Macedonian was, in the words of Wikipedia, a dismasted hulk, and British Captain John Sermon Carden was forced to strike his colors and surrender, having suffered some 104 casualties. The United States had apparently fired 70 broadsides to the Macedonian's 30. The Macedonian was repaired and was sailed back to the United States as a prize, arriving at Newport, Rhode Island on December the 4th. The Macedonian would eventually be purchased by the U.S. Navy and have a long career as the USS Macedonian. The USS Constitution Museum website provides a useful recap of this engagement and other War of 1812 battles on both land and sea. There's a link to it in the description. The USS Constitution Museum provides the following statistics regarding the engagement between the United States and the Macedonian. Number engaged: Macedonian, 301 seamen, 49 guns. United States, 428 seamen, 55 guns. Casualties: Macedonian, 36 dead, 68 wounded. United States, 5 dead, 7 wounded. On October 28th, William Henry Harrison writes U.S. Secretary of War William Eustis to request permission to launch a campaign against towns belonging to the Miami tribe along the Mississinewa River. The Mississinewa River in Indiana Territory. He has heard rumors the Miamis have been inciting the Delawares to join them in fighting the United States. Eustis will respond on November 5th, basically telling Harrison to use his own judgment, which means attack! Around the same time, according to 4g.wordpress.com, Commodore John Shaw, commander of U.S. forces at New Orleans, writes Navy Secretary Paul Hamilton to complain he doesn't have enough resources to defend the port against either pirates or the Royal Navy. Little does he know that them pirates might come in handy someday. And meanwhile, over in Russia, Napoleon begins his disastrous retreat from Moscow on October the 19th. Thus ends a month of action at sea, as well as one of the pivotal land battles of the war, the Battle of Queenston Heights, which will be covered in a separate video when I review Robert Malcomson's book, A Very Brilliant Affair. If this is your first visit to 1812 channel, my name is Warren and I'm your host. I'm not a historian, nor am I an expert on the War of 1812. I know, you can tell. Instead, I'm a student wishing to learn about the conflict. Each month for the roughly 3 years of the war, I will outline the major events. I will also review a book on the war. So, did I miss anything? Any errors? I bet there's a few. Then let me know about them in the comments below. And when the barrage lifts, cheers! Pictures used in today's video will depend on the gremlins here in the recording studio, while the music is an earworm called Pippin the Hunchback. Seriously, Pippin the Hunchback, by that patron of the internet, Kevin MacLeod. Thank you for listening.